Welcome to our webinar, Building School Budgets with Census Data, Enrollment Forecasts, Service Projections, and Tax-Based Analysis. I'm Crystal Jimerson, a training specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Fundamentals to Functionality Mastering Census Bureau Data webinar series. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data, tools, and resources. If you wish to follow along, take a moment now to open an additional browser. You can register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome written questions during the webinar. Please submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose all panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. We suggest keeping the chat panel open as we will provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind you won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out links and other resources related to the presentation. My colleagues will be monitoring the Q&A panel, and as time allows, we will answer your questions directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your questions with the presenter to respond to during the webinar. As you know, we are in a virtual environment, and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Amy Brambos. Thanks again for being here today. Amy, you may begin.
Thank you, Crystal, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are across our country today. Welcome to Building School Budgets with Census Data, Enrollment Forecasts, Service Projections, and Tax-Based Analysis. I'm Dr. Amy Brambos, and I'm a Data Dissemination Specialist with the Census Bureau covering New York State. But before I joined the Census Bureau, I spent 25 years in K-12 education as a teacher, administrator, Chief Information Officer, and then in higher ed as a professor, both in Buffalo and in Niagara Falls, New York. So I've sat where many of you are sitting, staring at a budget that has to work, wondering if my projections are solid, and hoping that the community will support what we're asking for. So let me start with a quick poll. So I know who's in the room today. I'm going to pop up a poll asking about your role. I'd like to know if you're a school administrator, a business official, a board member, or something else. And are you in K-12 or are you in higher ed? If you could go ahead and just pop in a response, that would be great. I imagine we have a really nice mix of folks here today, which would be great and just really perfect because this content applies whether you're building a budget, approving it, or defending it to your community. And knowing who's in our audience really kind of helps me direct where we're going to go today a little better. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to meet your needs. So thank you for going ahead and continuing to answer that. And great, as I'm looking at this, I can see that, yeah, we have quite a few from across higher ed, from across K-12. All right, please continue to answer the poll if you've still got that in front of you. Oh, I think it's over. But I'm going to go ahead and move on. So I want to start by acknowledging the reality that you're all living with. Education funding faces growing constraints, certainly now, while household costs are squeezing budgets and making communities increasingly cautious about tax increases. Every budget dollar that you have must deliver results. And you are working harder than ever. We're analyzing internal formative and summative assessment data, state test scores, attendance data, and you're projecting trends and defending every line item. You're doing everything right with the data that you have, but here's the challenge. Internal data tells you what has happened. It can't tell you what's about to happen. Your enrollment count is going to tell you how many students walked through the door on Census Day or Beds Day in October. Now, I know not every state uses that October Census Day count exclusively, but most do. So for the sake of this webinar, I'm going to go ahead and use this month as our reference date, if that's okay. But this does not tell you that the 0 to 5 population in your community possibly dropped 18% and you're about to lose or gain 600 students over the next 3 to 5 years. Your budget history might tell you that costs increased 12% while enrollment stayed flat, but it doesn't tell you why. Was it because linguistically isolated households in your community increased 70%, driving up ESL costs? Did more students with diverse disabilities and needs enter your district? Your median home value might tell you that the tax base looks strong, but it doesn't tell you that the majority of renters in your district are already spending 50% of their income on housing alone and literally cannot afford any increase. The gap between what you know from internal data and what's actually happening in your community, that's where these budget disasters come from. The good news is that there's a solution, and that's census data. And I know that some of you might be thinking, well, this sounds really complicated. I'm not a demographer, and I don't have time to become an analyst. And I hear you, and I understand, and that's why I'm here. Here's what makes census data perfect for school budgeting. First, it's free. There are no subscriptions, there are no vendor contracts, there's no budget line needed. Just open a browser, and once you know where to go, you are going to find that this saves you a lot of time. It's extremely efficient. Second, it's authoritative. This is the gold standard nationwide. When you cite census data, nobody questions it. Not your board, not the community, and not the state auditor. Third, it's updated annually. Most of the data you need comes from the American Community Survey, which gives fresh data every year. Fourth, it's predictive. This is the game changer because census shows you the most recent data. So 0 to 5 population data will help you predict enrollment 5 years from now. Housing data will tell you how many families with school-age children have moved into your district versus empty nesters. And housing cost burden can inform you of tax capacity tomorrow. And finally, it's defensible. So when a community member stands up in a budget hearing and says, this increase is too high, you have census data that allow you to respond with facts, not feelings. And we all know that that is much more beneficial. So what we're going to cover in the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to walk through 2 complete storylines, realistic budget scenarios that happen in districts across the country. And for each one, I want to show you exactly which census data to look at and how to find it. So first, we're going to look at a district that experienced the enrollment cliff, right? They had stable enrollment for 15 years. They budgeted for growth and then got blindsided by an almost 400 student drop annually, and more accurately, what would become a 1,600 student drop over 5 years, even though they experienced over 3,000 student decline over the course of a few. Second, we have a district that had a serious tax-based reality check after they had proposed a tax increase. They got crucified at public hearings because they did not have an accurate assessment of the economic impact that this was going to have on the families in the community. Some other critical budget lines that require community knowledge that I think you have in mind include special education costs and how you're going to decide between things like improved technology, sports equipment, or more counselors. We'll briefly discuss these additional topics and how you can receive continued support to find these data at the end. And we might have some time to view a few of them. If not, I'm going to make sure that you have very specific screenshots of everything we do today and some of these additional storylines so that you can practice finding these data on your own. Today, moving forward, this is going to be mostly live demonstrations using our feature data portal, data.census.gov. I want to show you how to filter your searches, which tables to look at, and how to save and download what you need. So if you plan to follow along, please open a tab to data.census.gov, or you can watch and take notes. And again, everything I'm going to show you will be provided in a copy of this presentation, which will include step-by-step screenshots. If you've never used this before, don't worry. I'm going to walk you through this like you're seeing it for the first time, because some of you are. If you've been in this tool previously, you may notice some updates and changes, so pay attention so you don't get lost. All right, let's get started. So the enrollment cliff. Imagine you're in a district that has had 15 years of enrollment stability. So every October count comes in, you're in a big district, you're in a urban environment, you've got around 25,400 students, sometimes 25,363, sometimes 25,569, but we're basically flat. And we're going to go back a little bit to 2017 because I want to use these data to show you what happened over the course of years and how this could have been predicted. So in 2017, that count was 25,670, so really right on track. The budget director ran a 5-year trend analysis and projected 25,112 students for the next year, for 2018. So a slight decline, but nothing to worry about, right? So you had some teachers, they had some teachers retiring. The board approved hiring 12 new teachers to maintain class sizes. So they had a $4.2 million investment over 3 years in salaries and benefits, and everything felt great, right? The following year, school enrollment went down, and the October count came in at 24,488 students. You lost 1,182 students. The next year, a loss of 1,943 with a count of 22,545. And after that, they lost another 701. So in 3 years, there was a loss of 3,826 students and a budget deficit in the millions of dollars. Teachers had to be laid off, class sizes ballooned. They had to decide between cutting art, music, transportation routes. Parents, of course, were furious, and board members really wanted to know, how did they not see this coming? So these people were really sort of blindsided. And this is not a real problem. I know some of you right now, just hearing that, are feeling a serious sense of anxiety because you know how bad this can be. You've sat in this seat. You've faced those firing squads before. The devastating part of the situation is that this is predictable, and census data can provide warnings about what's happening in the community within your district. And I'm going to show you where to look. But first, we're going to talk about two things. What did they know and what did they not know? So what they knew, well, they knew of the past 5 years of October enrollment. They knew current pre-K and kindergarten. They knew that there were no major boundary changes or policy changes. And they knew some housing construction had been happening in the district. But what they did not know was what was happening within the 0 to 5 population within the community. So these are the kids who are going to be in your schools 3 to 5 years from now, right? They didn't know what was the actual birth rate and fertility trend. They didn't know of the houses that were being built, or the families that were or the people that were moving in. Were they young families? Did they have school-age children? Were they of childbearing years? And they didn't know what kind of houses were being built. Are they 4-bedroom homes, or were they studio apartments for singles? Were they luxury apartments for childless couples? And were families with children being displaced by empty nesters? So all of that information exists. The question becomes, can you find it? And then can it be used to predict enrollment before the cliff hits? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. And this is why we're here, of course. We want to show you how. So let's look at some key census indicators. And here are some examples of the things that we're going to take a look at. So for enrollment forecasting, there's 4 key indicators we want to look at. We want to look at child population by age. So this is your enrollment pipeline. So if the 0 to 5 population is shrinking, your kindergarten enrollment is going to shrink over the course of 5 years. And then your elementary school enrollment, of course, is going to be smaller. Two, we want to look at household composition. Are households in your district more likely or less to have children? Is the average household size growing or is it shrinking? And is the family size growing or shrinking? We want to look at housing units by type. Are builders putting up single family homes or are they high rises? Are they attracting young professionals, families, empty nesters? Who is coming into your community? And then geographic mobility. Who's moving into your district? Are they family with kids or is it young professionals? Are they empty nesters? Are they seniors? So we're going to look at Hartford, Connecticut today as one of these examples, but these same indicators work for any district anywhere in the country. All right, so we're going to switch off now to data.census.gov. So again, if you are following along here with me, we're at data.census.gov, the URL hopefully you can see up here. And if you've been in here before, you'll notice this looks a little bit different than the last time you were perhaps in this tool. From here, we want to get to our main page and we're going to go ahead and click Explore Filters. Okay, you'll notice once you're in the main part here, again, if you were here before, we used to clear the screen over here by clicking on this logo. We're no longer going to do that. We want to clear the screen now and clear our searches by going over here to data.census.gov. If we click over here like you may be used to, that's going to take you to census.gov, our web page. So we want to sort of stay away from this here today. So let's take a look over here at our geographies. We are talking about school district data, and you'll notice that school districts aren't listed here. So for what I am interested in, I need to get to all geographies. So if I click here, you'll see all of the different geographic types listed that we can select from. And if we scroll down, we will eventually come to school districts. You'll see you have a choice: elementary, secondary, and unified. So elementary, you're only dealing with those elementary grades up to grade 6, secondary 7 and 8, and then your unified, or I'm sorry, secondary 7 through 12, and then your unified would be all of them, right? So K through 12. We're going to be dealing with a unified district today, so I'm selecting unified. Once I select my district, I have to go back and select my state. So within Connecticut. Now, one of the things that happens here is once you select your state, you get every school district in the state. So we can scroll through there, or we can come up here and we can just start typing the district that we want. So you see I only get 3 letters in before Hartford pops up, and I want Hartford School District, Connecticut. So I'm selecting this. Now, from this point, I have some options. We come down here and you can see these are the topics by which we can start drilling down our search tool. Or I can come down here and I can go ahead and click search right now. If I do that, you'll see that I now have 1,900 different data sets available to me. And I'm showing you that because I want you to see the vast amount of data that you can collect just about one school district. The kind of data, the vast volume of data that we have here available to you. So if I were to just start scrolling through this, if you've got the time and you're really curious, you can start scrolling through pages upon pages upon pages of lists of the kind of data tables that you can take a look at here. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is once you've selected your geography and you click select, you get this option of a data profile over here. And if I click the data profile, what will pop up for us is this really beautiful, really comprehensive summary of data about this geography. So we selected school district. Any geography you select, you can find a data profile for. Now this is going to take a minute, of course, to load because we're waiting for it. I happen to have one loaded for us here just in case that were to happen. So here you can see what this data profile looks like. And in some cases, this might be all you need. For what we're talking about today, it's not. We want to go more in depth, but I did want to show you this. So you can see at the top here, we've got our 8 key areas in which we want to look at data, populations, education, health, employment, and just some key indicators. And as we scroll down, then you'll notice that those populate up here as headings, which we could click on and go right to those topics, or we could continue to scroll through and notice we get more detailed information and some data visualizations about each one of them. If you were to look at any one of these, like for instance, languages spoken at home, and you want more detailed information about that, you'll see down here this little blue table ID. If I were to click that, it would take me right to that table within data.census.gov with all of the information available to me within that table. And we're going to take a look at this within data.census.gov as well. But I did want to show you this tool. This is very comprehensive. It's a really great option for you. And you can go ahead and copy and save this URL or share it with other people so that you always know where this is located. Going back now, though, I'm coming back here to data. And now we know we're looking for the 0 to 5 age group for this school district because we really want to project now the number of children. We're trying to project the number of children that are going to enroll in our school for elementary 5 years from now. And we were looking at 2017. We talked about what was happening there within the storyline. So just by clicking search, and you see that I got all of these different tools, age and sex happens to be the third one down here. Now for us, we got pretty lucky. That is great, but that's not always going to be the case for you, that what you're looking for is going to pop up right away. So you have options within your topics. For this particular one, I have a couple ways I could search this. I can go into populations and people and choose age and sex. And if I do that, that age and sex table is going to be right here. Now, that's great, but I really want to look at children, and I want to make sure I'm filtering through to get just those school-age children. So my other option here is within topics to go right to, families and living arrangements, select children, and select children again. Now, what you're going to notice is, once it loads here, age and sex is still an option because those children are still part of that table. But, and if I click that, what we're going to see is a breakdown of all of the people who live within the school district by age. So we've got under 5, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 15 to 19. So this 15 to 19 is a little bit troublesome for us because we want school age, and up to 19 is beyond what we're looking for unless we're looking at college age. But we can come down and scroll down here a little further and see what else is available to us in here in case we need this later or there's other things that might be interesting to us. So this is one option. But if I come down and I look further, you'll see this other table, S0901, children characteristics. If I click here, you'll see a different breakdown in age, which includes under 6, 6 to 11, and then 12 to 17. So now I do have my school age population here, and then my nursery school, pre-K, and developing students in here under 6. Now, if I scroll down here, you'll see the further breakdown of different information about race and ethnicity, relationship to the householder, whether they're being raised by their biological parents or step-parents, grandchildren, raised by their grandparents or foster families, nativity, disability status, and so we're going to pay attention to this because we might want to look at that again, and school enrollment. And this is something I want to draw your attention to because we are definitely going to look at this. So this is important as well as we're trying to predict how many students may enroll in our school district. So how many students enroll in public school out of the entire amount of children who are school age versus private school? This is information we have here, and we can get this at a more granular level in another table and other tables also. Median income, And that's something that we might want to take a look at, especially if we're talking about tax base. Public assistance, poverty status. Poverty status is something that's extremely important to you within the school district, but I'm going to show you a different tool that's going to work better for you as school administrators and grant writers as far as poverty status for schools are concerned, and I'll explain why. And then housing tenure. Tenure meaning where are they living? Are they owner occupied or renter occupied? And this also is something that's going to be important for us to understand and know. So one of the things I want to draw your attention to is as I pulled this table up, you'll see that immediately this populated with our most recent data, which is 2024 data. And so if we click on this caret, you'll see it gives us all of the other options for vintage years available to us back to 2010. This particular table is only available to us within 5-year estimates. Other tables, like age and sex, have different options in 1-year or 5-year subject tables. Now, not every school district or every geography will be available to you in a one-year estimate versus 5. That's based on population thresholds. So this district is very large. They meet the population threshold of 65,000 people or more, which is why you have a 1-year estimate here. We're going to stick with collecting 5-year estimate data today because many of you are going to come from smaller districts. And I don't want to make you think that just school districts are sort of bound by this, because even large counties in many places, like New York State, for example, has many counties that do not meet that population threshold. They're rural. They do not have. They might be big as far as region is concerned, but not as far as population is concerned. I want to look at one more of these tables here really quick by coming down here at B09001. If we click here, you'll see another breakdown. And so this might be important or better for you as well, depending on what it is you're looking for. You'll see here in households, we have another breakdown. Do you want to know about children under 3 specifically, and 3 to 4-year-olds, and then 5 years old? Then this might be the table that works best for you. If you have kindergarten or UPA, if you have preschool, nursery school, or the universal pre-K programs, then this might be very important for you to know this breakdown here. So you'll notice that there are a lot of different options for you. And I want you to see all of the ones available to you, depending on how detailed you need to get with your predictions and forecasting. So we're going to keep it as simple as possible today. We're going to go back up here to age and sex, S0101. And as I said, we want to keep our 5-year forecast, and we started talking about 2017. So I'm going to scroll back down here and I'm going to show you what this looks like. I'm going to explain again why I'm starting back here in 2017. So in 2017, we can see that for children under 5 years old, we had 8,202 children under 5 years old within this district, right? So, we want to know then after within 5, so this is a 5-year estimate, right? Between 2013 and 2017, we have 8,202 children. So what happens in the next 5 years? So if we look now between 2018 and 2022, we see there are now 6,582 children aged 0 to 5. So what happened here? We lost 1,620 children within this district over that 5-year period. That's almost a 20% decline. So if this number stays consistent, this could be your new enrollment 5 years from now. So could they have predicted this by looking only at age data between 2017 and 2021? We know that there's age data within here, but we know there's also probably some other factors to consider. So this is a huge drop, and this is what had happened, right? So we had, as I had said in the beginning when I was reading the scenario, the first year they lost 1,000 students, and then it was 700 students, and then it was again another 1,000 students. So over the course of this time between one 5-year period to the other, they wound up losing a significant number of students. So can we really rely on this predictor or this number as a predictor for school enrollment? Well, there are a couple of things we want to take into consideration here. One of them being how many of these students can we accurately predict are going to enroll in public school versus private school. So we remember back to table S0901 down here. And we said that, well, we were just looking at 1 year and there was about 94% or 95% of the children that attended public school. If we go back year after year after year and we take a 15 or 20 year period of time and average that out, it does remain consistent with approximately 24% of children attending public school. So potentially 6,187 of these children could enter public school within the next 5 years if these data remain consistent. So can we find more granular data about school enrollment? Of course we can. We absolutely can do that. So how do we do that? If we come back out and we change children, and we go down to topics and we want to change this to education. So we're going to come here to education. We're going to go to school enrollment and we're going to stick with school enrollment. So here we see table S1401. Now we were at 20, remember we were at 2017, 5 years, and we were at 2022, 5 year. So we want to go back and remain consistent. We want to take a look at that again. So now if we go back here to 2017, our 5-year estimate, and we look at nursery school, we look at kindergarten enrollment, we look at elementary grade 1 to 4, and we look at overall kindergarten through grade 12, we've got this information here about school enrollment very specifically for the overall district. And if we scroll over, we can also see this information for public school versus percent public school versus private school. Now, within here, you'll see margins of errors. We're going to touch on that a little bit also. I'm going to go ahead and remove that right here just to clean this up a little bit. So we see we've got all of these data. Now we're going to want to pull that out, or you're probably going to want to pull that out and be able to save that in an Excel file so that you can start doing some comparative analysis year by year by year. And you can do that a couple of ways. One way is to come up here and click download. And you can download that as an Excel file, a CSV file, or a zip file. Now, the benefit of the zip file is that by selecting zip and download data, you can select then multiple years. So I know for sure I want 2017. I would know for sure I want 2022. And I may want these years here in the middle in order to just see what is the trend year by year by year by year. Is it really declining the way that we are predicting it's going to based on just what we saw for the population 0 to 5? I would click download zip. It would give me all of those files. I could load them up into an Excel, and using some Excel functions, they would even populate together on the same table. The other option I have here is share, where I can copy this link and share it with others in an email or save it to my files myself. So we've got or you can just copy this URL up here. So there's a few different options for you to download and share these files. If you're using this in a report, I will show you it also gives you the option of how to properly cite the data. And then you'll notice there are some other options here too to convert some of these data to charts and to maps, which is a lesson for another day, but it does exist. So So we're looking here now at these data for 2017, our 5-year period. And then if we came up again to 2022, now we're going to see the difference between the enrollment between 2017 and 2022. And we can see that enrollment declined here as well as we saw it within that the number of children who were 0 to 5 years old. Now we're in 2022 and we're seeing that 2017 to 2022 actual enrollment has significantly declined. And if I were to go back now between that time and this time and look at each year, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and view the number of students who were 0 to 5, or the number of children who were 0 to 5 years old within this district, and then project 5 years out to see how many were enrolled K4. I can start to establish a trend, and I can start to see, is this consistent over the course of that time? And I'm going to show you a graph in which I did that, and you'll see that yes, it actually was. It was very, very close. So based on age data, they could have predicted a loss of approximately 650 students within that first year before even considering other variables. And they would have been prepared to lose almost 25 classrooms. So we know our numbers are close, but we could do better. We could predict a loss. If we could predict a loss of 650 students, but let's say we only lost 500 or 49, at the end, we'd be either adding 2 students to every existing class, or we'd be trying to hire back a bunch of teachers we just laid off. So, do the numbers stay consistent? Sometimes, but sometimes not. We know there are other variables we need to consider. And we know, like we talked about, variables like housing, construction, mobility. And what does this mean, these housing trends in our district? So we want to maybe go back and take a look at some of those. So let's take a look at household composition real quick. I'm going to come back to my filters. And again, I have a few different options. I can come down here. Let's get rid of school enrollment. I can come down here and I can go ahead and try to go through families and living arrangements, and within family and living arrangements, you'll see families and household characteristics as an option, and that's one way to go. Another way to go is housing, financial characteristics, and I'm going to stick with financial characteristics. And I'm going to stay here because this is going to allow us to kill a couple birds with one stone for some of the things that we want to discuss. Now, if I'd gone through families, I would have looked at a table called households and families, and it would have given us some information, but I did not do that. I came here, and I'm going to stick here with selected housing characteristics. This table gives us a great deal of information. Now I'm going to go back and again, look at our original year. So we're staying consistent. I'm going to remove margin of error just for the sake of cleaning this up a little bit. And now we'll see what this gives us is some interesting stuff, including the year structures were built, or the years people moved in. So we can now go back and we can look and see, well, here, this is telling us over this course of time here, how many people were moving into this district. We can also come down and you can look if this is something interesting to you as well about at any point, selected characteristics of housing, and occupants per room, for example, but we also have value of housing units. So median dollars of value of housing unit, for example. And what we wanted, I think I passed. Where did it go? Bedrooms. We have occupants per room, and then we had number of bedrooms. That's what I was looking for. Oh, there we are. I passed it. The number of bedrooms. So why would this be important? Well, people living in a apartment or home with no bedrooms or one bedroom, so we're talking about studio and one bedroom apartments. These are probably not families living here, right? So during this course of time, we can see from 2013 to 2017, about 30.5% of people were living in this type of a situation. And we can also scroll through and we can find household rental rates, vacancy rates, and occupied housing units. So this is all information that's going to help us predict where people are living and how they're living. Here we've got 1 unit detached and attached homes versus obviously apartment structures, and what's the percentage of people living in these areas. So let's go forward and let's look at 2022 5-year estimates. Here, this is what's going to be a little more telling for us, for sure. Now we can see year structures built. This is what's going to give us some really interesting information. 2010 to 2019, we can see we had about 1,545 structures. So what are those structures? Were they single family homes? Were they apartment buildings? These were things we don't know. And we can see that there was a lot more construction earlier in previous years than there was then. And we can see after 2020, very little construction happening. Here again, we can scroll down and we can see bedrooms, no bedrooms or studio and 1-bedroom apartments. At this time, we had 32% of the population versus 2017, which was only 30%. So we have more people living in studio or 1-bedroom apartments. So again, not families. We can also go ahead and scroll down. We can find more information about the value of home, which we're going to want if we're looking at tax bases, and somewhere we've got gross rent. Again, gross rent as a percentage of income also is something that we're going to want to look when we're looking at tax bases. So this is a table that we're going to want to come back to again. So we can find average household size in here. We can see that between this one and the previous table that we looked at for 2017, we had 2.65 people as an average household size versus 2.23. So we're going down a little bit. 25% people lived in owner-occupied buildings versus renter-occupied, which was 74%. And that stayed relatively consistent. And if we had looked at table S1101 in households and families, we could also find out that 34% of households in 2017 had children versus 32% in 2022. So we're declining even with the number of families, not a ton, but enough that it's worth considering taking a look at. So what are these data telling us? What does this really mean? We had a 20% decline in children under 5. And how many classrooms is that going to lose for us? How many students are in each of your elementary school buildings? Does this mean closing a building? Should we be actively hiring? Should we be freezing hiring? What should be happening? Should we be planning consolidations with community input so we don't have emergency closures? Can we adjust budgets gradually instead of making a traumatic mid-year cut? We have a lot of decisions to make, and census data gives us 3 to 5 year warning systems, but we just have to use it. So when we looked at the age data versus enrollment 5 years later, here's a little bit, as I told you, I graphed it to show you just how consistent we can use these predictions to be. So here for 2017 versus 2022, we predicted 8,202 students. There were 8,292 enrolled 5 years later. 2018 to 2023, we predicted 8,329. There was 8,140. 2019 to 2024, 7,635 to 7,281. So this one, again, we probably would have wanted to look at housing, who's moving in and out. We do have tables that look at residential mobility, which will tell us how many family members are moving into our district. And if they're moving in from the same district to a different house or from other states or from other counties, those tables and those data are available to you. So that being said, now knowing we have 2022 age 0 to 5 data for 6,582 children age 0 to 5, can we predict relatively certainly, at least within a certain margin of error, how many students are going to be enrolled in 2027 within the school district? That is a question to ask. and just how comfortable you might be. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's Hartford, it's a specific situation, it's a large urban school district, and that's a fair point. But if we look at Douglas County, Colorado, which is a wealthy suburban Denver district, it's a completely different context. You'll find that they went through something extremely similar. So they have very established neighborhoods, Highlands Ranch, Castle Pines. They were built in the 1990s and the 2000s, and they had a lot of young families and a huge enrollment boom. The 0 to 5 population of those neighborhoods declined almost 13% between 2010 and 2022. And what happened? Well, the original families that were there, their kids graduated, they became empty nesters, and those who were buying were downsizing. They were empty nesters, they were active adults, they were not families growing into that community. Meanwhile, there was another subdivision, Sterling Ranch, that was being built, and some families were moving in there, but not enough to offset the loss. So they were projecting an actual increase based on the number of, or the construction that was happening, but not paying attention to the number of children age 0 to 5, or the fact that there was construction, but it wasn't construction that was being done to attract families. And this is a pattern that's playing out right now nationwide. We see gentrification of urban districts, aging suburbs, growing Sunbelt areas. The specifics differ, but the methodology really is the same. So if you've got another situation here, which would be your tax base reality issue, and you want to propose perhaps an increase in taxes of, say, 4% tax increase, because you've got a 4% tax increase, which you think will increase about $6 million within your district, right? So the average homeowner might pay about $312 more a year. And so this could be for, so this is your ask, 4.8% tax increase, $6 million increase, about $312 per homeowner per year. It doesn't seem to be that big of a deal until you have this community hearing in which people are irate because they're telling you you're not paying attention to needs of the community. So you know your proposed budget and tax increase. You know the average homeowner increase. And here's the thing is, you know, or they knew, the average median household income, and they knew the average median household value. But what they didn't know was that income distribution, not just the value of the home and not just the value of or the income of people, but how does that differ? They really didn't pay attention to that. They also didn't pay attention to the number of households that were experiencing cost burden. So if how many households are already spending 30% or more of their income on rent, on mortgage, the number of seniors on fixed income, or the geographic variations that happen across the district. So there was a really very big difference between what was really happening versus their perceived capacity for this tax increase. So it's very much like increase in pizza costs, you know, and groceries, which everyone's experiencing right now. So a family making $2,000 a week, a 1.3% income, and pizza to $26 instead of $23, that's nothing. But a family making $500 a week, now it's, we'll get a pizza, or that's right now a half a tank of gas for me to get my kids to and from school, or for me to get to and from work. And so that becomes pretty significant, of course. And so this is, these are other indicators for tax-based analysis, and these are tables that we have available to you. So household income distribution over your district, and we can break down that geography. So we can look at your district, but what are the components of your district, especially if it's large? Does your district make up different towns, cities, or do we need to break that down into smaller areas like our census tracts, which are small neighborhoods of about 4,000 people? And we can do that as well. We have those data for you. Housing cost burden, the percentage of your home, or the number of homeowners who are paying 30% of their income on housing, 40%, 50% of their income on housing. We have those data for you. Age of householders and incomes. So how many what of your residents living in your community are seniors on a fixed income or veterans who are disabled on a fixed income? We have that for you as well. And can we vary that geographically? We absolutely can, and those data are available for you as well. And again, all of this is going to be provided to you in step-by-step screenshot instructions. So some questions I want you to think about when you sit back to ask your budget team. When you're asking questions like, what does our 0 to 5 population look like 5 years ago versus look like now versus 5 years ago, we've got our green flag answers versus our red flag answers. And I've got 8 questions here for you that you'll be able to take with you so that you can look at and find out and ask yourself, have I asked and answered these questions this way? Or do I need to look at this a different way, right? Our red flag answers, enrollment's been stable, so we projected continued stability. Or did you actually go back and look at what's been happening within the district and the number of children who've been born during that period of time? Housing loss, you can see here. Are you experiencing the same trends as neighboring districts? That's a great question as well. And if we look at things like tax base, what percentage of your community is already experiencing a housing cost burden? And does the increase affect different income groups differently across your community? So these are questions I've got here for you that I encourage you to take with you, to ask yourselves, to ask your teams. And some more storylines that I'm going to give you some screenshots for you to practice include the hidden costs of changing demographics, which we talked about a little bit before. So if your enrollment is flat, but your costs have increased, we want to know how your composition changed. So we have the data and we have the tables that include ability to speak English well, disability data by age and type, SNAP enrollment and eligibility, and poverty rate, as well as things like what's the return on investment for your budget lines. All of these things, there's a lot of research that goes into what's most effective, and that's great. But a universal best investment may not be the best investment for your district or your community. We have the data to support you in helping you figure out what might be the best thing for you. So next steps, you're going to get the download, your presentation and the screenshots. Try some of these things with your district and share it with your team, and contact me if you need help. Let's go back where we started. Remember, this is free. The data are free, the portals are free, the training is free. Continual professional development like this is at no cost to you or your district. This was very fast. We didn't get into a ton of it. We had a very short period of time. We really need at least 90 minutes of heavy screen sharing where we're in the tool talking about your needs. We do short presentations, we do full day, half day workshops. We can come and really help you figure this out and find the data that you need to do what you need to do to make sure you have students who are achieving academically and a strong fiscal budget. We do this through the data dissemination program. We also have Census Academy, which is how you found this webinar, and also multiple data gems, which are short videos in which you'll find a lot of different things, including a short video called SAPI, which explains what the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates tool is. And that's what I wanted to discuss briefly. That's the tool that the federal government uses to determine your title funding. So if you are one of those people that does title grants, you are going to want to know how to use that tool and how to find it. And we can help you with that as well. And there is a data gem that you can watch. It's about 6 minutes long that can help you do that. So thank you. Thank you for being here. You're doing such important work. We value you so much. And if we've got any questions in the last, I'm sorry, only 5 minutes, I'm more than happy to field those now.
Hi, Amy. It's Nicole. Yeah, a couple of questions. One is, the question is there a table that shows enrollment for charter schools?
Ooh, that's a great question. There is a table that shows enrollment for charter schools, because you'll notice what we had was just public versus private. And of course, charters are considered public, but they're not part of your district, right? So Yes, there is, but it's not located in this portal, and this is the only one we explored today. So what you would want to look at is what's called the National Center of Education Statistics portal, or nces.ed.gov. And a DDS can guide you through that tool at your convenience, or I certainly can if you want to reach out to me. Let me put my information back up here for you. You'll see on the bottom here is my email and my phone number.
All right, perfect. And then one other question. This is a good one. Is the Census Bureau data reliable for small districts?
Yes. Absolutely. But I would say for a smaller district, you want to really pay attention to the margin of error. And as I said, we were going to talk about that. We didn't get back to that, but we saw the 5-year ACS data that we were looking at, and we saw the margins of errors next to it. So 5-year data is really designed for those smaller geographies. It pulls 5 years of data to create these estimates for smaller populations. So when you're looking at the margin of error next to an estimate number, we're looking to see the kind of range, it's the range of uncertainty. So if a table says you've got a 0 to 5 population, that's about 2,600 with a plus or minus of 183, that means the value is likely between 2,473 and 2,839, for example. So we're looking for like a large change that would exceed the margin of error. So if your 0 to 5 population dropped and you've both a margin of error that's slim versus very large, I mean, a margin of error that's very slim, that's a real decline. It's not statistical noise, right? So if the margin of error were very large, you might want to rethink it and go back and look at some other data, which we could help you find. But those large margins of errors versus the small margins of errors would be really what you would want to look at as far as looking at small districts. But the key here is that we're using this for budget planning, and we're looking at trends and patterns. It's not precise within one specific tool. You have to take, as we showed, and accumulate correlations amongst many, many different factors and variables in your community. And you know what's going on there. It's just really taking a good hard look at the community.
All right. Well, thanks, Amy. That was excellent, excellent presentation today. The key message, I guess, is reach out if you have more questions, right? So I think we have less than a minute left. I'm going to throw it back to Crystal.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. And thank you, Amy, for this wonderful presentation. Thank you for presenting the accessible census data to navigate our budget shifts, unpredictable changes, and also just providing the forecasting indicators. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. We thank you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. We are very interested in hearing from you on how we are doing. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation that will appear when you exit the webinar. That brings us to a close. We thank you again for joining us today and hope you have a great afternoon.